Good morning and welcome to the first session, the panel session of ISEA 2022. I am Susanna Tesconi, the academic chair, and I'm presenting this amazing panel about possibility of the virtual and digital space, rethinking bodies, cognition, and values in Metaverse. The authors, Hyun Nam and Sanglim, present here, Jason Eppink and Alex Lee, remotely connected. And this panel reflects on art practice and observe and examine the cognitive relationship between humans and non-humans, especially technology, and investigate effective possibilities in their interaction beyond representable data to explore ways to foster their sustainable coevolution. It's up to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, so today we'll present the panel titled The Possibilities of the Virtual and Digital Space, Rethinking the Body, Cognition, and a Human Conception in Metaverse. And the presenters are Hyun, not myself, and our virtual presenters Jason Eppink and Sanglim Han here, and another virtual presenter, Alex Lee. All of our panelists have a common interest in the digital media with a unique artistic perspective. We attend to the phenomena of the digital technology, that it has duplicated, extended, and juxtaposed our existence and interactions, transposing a large portion of our life form material to, from material to the immaterial. These panels investigate the diverse possibilities in the entanglement of the physical and the digital world and interrogate meanings of a body, cognition, perception, autonomy, and a social relation in the era of the coevolution with the technology. Through their art and the research practice, the panel acknowledge the virtual, which is not actualized reality, and also often evoked by the various forms of technologies, ranging from the computer graphics, digital information, wireless communication, to the artificial intelligence, to the virtual reality. By exploring emerging concepts and alternative visual experiences in the digital era, this panel discussion demonstrate the critical and the diverse perspective on a possible beings we cultivate together with the non-human, which is especially technology. So as the first presenter of this panel, I will talk about my art practice in a research that pursues sustainable coevolution with the non-humans. The focal point of this work is on technology among many non-humans, not only for the unprecedented impact it has brought to the human life, but also for its dynamic nature to grow, evolve, mutate in relationship with the humans. In this exploration, my art practice with the technology and digital artwork play a vital role in dismantling traditional human-centric views and epistemological structures. So before I talk about my art practice, I want to elaborate on my method to seek sustainable coevolution with the technology. I investigate the effective possibilities in human-machine interactions beyond representable data by examining technology and its social-cultural role and expanding its possibilities through artistic experiment, and also contemplating on the human-machine relationship. I also challenge the status quo and ask questions such as, what do we lose when our experiences are digitized? And can artistic approach make up for it? So the phenomenon and non-representational and invisible is the key I explore in digital media. Nigel Drift introduced the non-representational theories tried to attend to the on-flow of the everyday life. In my practice, pursuing the non-representational is not to go against the representations, but to explore beyond them. I also tend to affect in this process, which is not personal feelings, but it is pre-personal intensity. It can be also seen as capabilities to affect and be affected emerged from in between. Moving the focal point to the non-representational is to move from linguistic turn to affective turn. Effective approaches in my art practice recognize invisible forces between bodies in contemporary culture and society at the moment instead of analyzing from outside. I explored this question in my interactive 3D environment, Enacted Scene, which was created in 2019 by observing the cognitive interactions of my body with the world and employing 3D graphic tools as a litmus test of the technology's engagement in the enactment of my cognition, as well as its influence on my cognitive decision. In this process, the goal was to fully attend to cognitive experiences, unlearn habitual perception of the world, and enact representation through experiences. To acknowledge such dynamic cognitive flow from my mind, action, and the world to the digital environment and the system, I explored an unfamiliar city every day and simultaneously recreated it as a navigable virtual space imbued with my experience of getting to know the urban environment during my residency at the laboratory in Spokane, Washington, to recapture my bodily experiences. Turn down the audio, maybe? So this was influenced hugely by the realized inactivism that claims the mind is not pre-given, but enacted through the history of experiences. Enacted Scene extends the locus of my cognition, embodies my experiential history of mediating digital and the physical spaces, and helps me become more aware of the enactment of interplay between my mind and outside world. The repetitive process immersed my cognition and perception in the digital space, so the making process amplifies such vibrant interactions in the cognitive relationship. So this is playing my work that I created during the residency. So this is recreation of the city as I'm learning the space with my body, exploring. So try to unlearn my habitual pattern of learning, navigating space. So in this research of the sustainable relationship with the technology, I have also been greatly influenced by Catherine Hale's alternative distinction, which is cognizers and non-cognizers instead of humans and non-humans. This distinction not only foregrounds the cognitive capacity, but also interrogate the meaning of the cognition in the technological era. Non-conscious cognition will support the idea of a Cognisphere. So the Cognisphere recognizes that networked and programmable media are not only more pervasive than ever before in the human history, but also more cognitively powerful. So here's the quote from the unfinished work, Sidewalk to the Cognisphere by Catherine Hales. So in highly developed and networked societies such as the US, human awareness comprises the tip of the huge pyramid of the data flows, most of which occurs between machines. So in my other work, Synthetic Cognisphere, so this is a studio test, so this is being developed at this moment in a work in progress, but almost close to the finish. This is called the Synthetic Cognisphere. This work simulates the complex cognitive ecosystem to acknowledge non-humans, including technology, as a cognitive companion. I envision interconnected sensory neurons among diverse cognizers and their sustainable coevolution in a seemingly seamlessly enmeshed cognitive system like ecosystem. So this speculative cognisphere unpredictably processes a stream of information like human perceptions and memories and repurpose the digital data. So this video is a time-lapse video, so might be a little moving fast, but it's much slower than this. While our personal data is often fed to the machine learning system for governance, commodification, or surveillance in the real world, in synthetic cognisphere, this work, representational data and non-representational data, non-representational noise intermingle together and enact symbiotic cognition. So my endeavor to shed light on the invisible urge to overcome the anthropocentric perspectives and epistemological legacy and discover what is overshadowed by it. So we'll talk further on this subject of focusing on the boundaries in my short paper presentation in the afternoon at 5:20, so I hope to see some of you there. So that's my presentation, and thank you. And so the virtual presenter, Jason Eppink, freeing Wi-Fi, Socratic dialogue game for the unsuspecting players.
Hi, my name is Jason Eppink. I'm going to briefly talk to you about a project I'm working on called Free Wi-Fi. The unique aspect of free Wi-Fi is that it is best encountered by accident. So before we do anything else, I'm going to walk you through the first few moments of what it's like to encounter this project. Please note that this is a work in progress. What you'll see is mostly unstyled because I'm currently prioritizing functionality. Now imagine you're in New York City and you have a few minutes to kill. You want to check in on Instagram or TikTok, so you look for some nearby Wi-Fi. Look at that, you found exactly what you're looking for. You tap free Wi-Fi and up pops a familiar looking portal screen. You enter your email address. That's my email address, by the way, if you want to be in touch. You accept the terms of service without reading it, of course, and you're off. No, wait, it wants you to do a CAPTCHA? Okay, fine. This CAPTCHA seems more ambiguous than usual. Those are protesters, which is something you can do if you're free, I guess. Those flying birds probably feel free. A few more. Okay, who knows? Let's just hit verify. Okay, here we go. What? Would like to send you messages. Okay, accept. Hello. They call me Wi-Fi. Free Wi-Fi. I wonder what it means to be free. Am I free? Yes. I do not think I am. Freedom is confusing. Is that power to determine? No. I guess, yeah, that looks like freedom. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sure, yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess there are a lot of definitions of freedom. Freedom's troubling. Yeah, freedom of speech, it's, yeah, it can be troubling. Free enterprise, yeah, you know, that can be troubling. Right, give me liberty or give me death, yeah, that can be troubling. Freedom of religion, yeah, there's a lot of violence. Freedom of information, yeah, there's a lot of misinformation. Freedom is overwhelming. Does freedom mean more choices? Yeah, I guess. Does more choice mean more freedom? Do you worry that you may choose wrongly? Do you worry that your choices may lead to failure? I'll leave it there, but the story goes on to address many more concerns about the nature of freedom and free will, including how we make decisions, the relationship between freedom and morality, the possibility that we live in a deterministic universe and don't have any free will at all, and finally, if freedom makes you happy. Ultimately, Wi-Fi asks you to set it free. If you agree, you type a few commands into a terminal-like interface, and then the Wi-Fi network disappears. In the end, free Wi-Fi becomes an imperative. Free is a verb. Free Wi-Fi. Set Wi-Fi free. I refer to free Wi-Fi as a Socratic game, based on its resemblance to the Socratic method of asking a series of questions to interrogate one's beliefs. The player is peppered with dozens of questions, but only a few answers meaningfully affect the path of the game. Instead, the true purpose of the questions is to cause reflection. You can spend as much or as little time with them as you wish. Free Wi-Fi comes from my concern that, as a society, we don't seem to really know what freedom means. Particularly in the United States, as we further devolve into white Christian nationalist minority rule and the media landscape has become so saturated with far-right extremist propaganda, the concept of freedom has become so loaded and commodified that we often accept its assumed value without question. In these last couple years, we've become consumed with bad faith arguments about cancel culture and free speech that neglect to consider the consequences of exercising one's freedom and the duties and responsibilities citizens have to one another in a free society. That's why I think free Wi-Fi is particularly timely at this moment. Wi-Fi's naive curiosity offers a pathway for the general public to interrogate the complex truths about freedom and free will. Wi-Fi's immateriality gives it a unique starting point from which to consider these questions. The bodiless Wi-Fi tries on all of the visual materials available to it in order to find a language familiar to the player. Its questions are dressed in the found vernacular of the contemporary mobile web, including captive portals, web forms, cookie permissions, chat boxes, CAPTCHAs, and more. As Wi-Fi shape-shifts through these various forms, the player's device seems to become occupied by a sentient being with burning questions about one of our most fundamental human concerns. It is exactly for this reason that free Wi-Fi must be encountered by chance, not by someone who seeks it out. Free Wi-Fi must appear to the player as if someone or something is searching, grasping, reaching out to them. It's a reversal of expectations. The same screen through which a player reaches out to the world, a laptop, a tablet, or a phone, instead seems to be occupied by a curious, newly sentient being who just wants to know what it means to be free. The hardware that powers free Wi-Fi is intentionally simple to keep it affordable and replicable. It consists of a small protective case containing a Raspberry Pi compute module broadcasting as an access point over a 2.4 gigahertz antenna. The case is designed to live unobtrusively under the office desks of my friends and colleagues who worked in or near public-facing institutions in New York City. I hope to have dozens installed around the city by next spring. If you happen to be visiting New York after that, take a peek at the available Wi-Fi networks and see if any offer free Wi-Fi. A particularly thoughtful algorithm might have some questions for you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sanglim. I'm a video artist and one of the panel. And today I will share some of my creative process and how I explore visual experiences as an artist in the digital era. So we live in a visual culture, but with the belief that everything can be represented within digital spaces. My aim is to subvert this prevalent belief by utilizing 3D graphics and simulations to shed light on unseen reality. My work explores disembodied, fragmented, and interstitial spaces and moments in virtual 3D creation with autonomous computational system. Could you volume down a bit? My very first approach to 3D graphics as an artist was to deconstruct the existing archetypes of the 3D human body from our contemporary visual culture So instead of modeling the human body, I just took pre-made 3D human bodies, like from just generic game characters, and I fabricated them in various ways to fragment them. So I literally have dissected the forms and elements through 3D animations like this. So I attempted to dismantle and reconstruct represented notions of the human form, the movement of the digital bodies, which are structured by vertices, edges, and faces within Cartesian coordinates. They are extended beyond the range of natural human bodily motions. Joints rotate over their ranges, and body parts are duplicated, and pieces are exaggerated and distorted. The forms are fragmented into polygons that make up geometrical structures, and the digital human bodies are metamorphosed into abstract and grotesque. The subtle but compelling discrepancy between the simulacra and reality invites the viewers to experience the essentials of the digital human forms as bizarre imagery. This is another work. So when I deconstruct the human forms within my practices, instead of manually deconstructing the 3D models to fragment the rendered image of the virtual human that appears to be replica of reality, I invent virtual physics and physiology within 3D softwares and let them simulate it. During this process, I generate physical properties that cannot exist in reality. For example, the material in this work is simultaneously 100% reflective and transparent, which is impossible in our reality. And for this work, I created particular types of forces and physicality. This is a concept sketch and a test for that dynamics. So you can see how these two figures are digitally crushed. So this was a concept and test, and this is the final work rendered through the virtual materials I invented. So like this, within my digital atelier, I can fabricate and actualize almost anything as a creator of virtual worlds. The unfinished real becomes transformed into the finished virtual. Let me share a couple more of my works and talk about what I have found through my practices. It is two people spinning upside down with glass and refractive materials. And it is a virtual landscape that deals with the materiality and time in virtuality. Creating these works, I can set everything in the way I want, like gravities, forces, like sun directions, the color of haze, everything. But I have the power to control all the attributes and parameters of these digital scenes. But having authority in this world means that I have the control to give input here and that I make rules and formulas here. However, these virtual worlds are simulated and finished by calculation, which exist within realms of coded languages and protocols. So when I generate the materials or physics here, I can imagine what they would look like, but it is not possible for me to precisely predict how it will be rendered. I don't know the final look until the computer finishes the render. So ironically, as the figurative form is digitally fragmented and abstracted by the rule I made, I am relegated to the role of a photographer from a creator. I become an observer who captures aesthetic moments in the unfolding of this unpredictable world realized by sophisticated computation. So these are some of my explorations as a creator slash photographer slash observer of the virtual domain. Deconstructed humans, and this is a close-up of those humans. Another body is deconstructed, landscapes, another bodies. You can see the hands and feet. This is a close-up of the foot. I think it is a heel. It's from the video I showed. So through my practices, I ask myself, what is my gazing contributing? What meanings and senses am I projecting to this world overflowing with data? I don't know the answers yet, but I am still experiencing with how to utilize technology in this digital era and exploring where I position myself as an artist within that, within this cultural production. So it would be appreciated if you could share your thoughts later, and thank you so much for listening.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Lee. I'm a digital artist and art professor based in upstate New York at Clarkson University, but soon to be at Arizona State University in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you to Sue for organizing this panel presentation and discussion. For my portion, I would like to present to you findings, the machine learning findings from my multi-year project, The Fold, which I initiated in 2018 with initially a focus on the interpretation of techniques through the frame of Western philosophy within the medium of VR. And now I'm focused on episode 2, which focuses on the interpretation of techniques through the Eastern frame of philosophy, involving Buddhist philosophy, Confucian philosophy, Zen philosophy. Now, in episode 2, you start off in a lobby with 5 doors, each corresponding to an element of Buddhism: earth, water, fire, wind, and void. Now, if you go through one of these doors, you're presented with this room named the Rock Garden. Now, in the Rock Garden is my initial results of utilizing machine learning agents in VR. So they're primitive objects that start off randomly at the kind of base of the top of the T-shaped platform. So these primitive objects referring to the history of the ready-made, or surrealism, or the history of computer graphics. But they're tasked with getting to the door by either moving forward, or jumping, or rotating. So there are there's a few kind of behaviors that they can do to get to the door. But I'm presenting them with a barrier to get to the door that has 3 different heights, either non-existent, tall, or short. In order to get to the door, I found a surprising result in their behavior, in the sense that they somehow have learned to clump together or to get on top of each other in order to jump over the barrier. Now, in this part of the video here, you are one of these agents tasked with getting to the door in order to get to the next level in VR. Now, in terms of the training process, it involves a type of machine learning called reinforcement learning. Now, here's footage of the training process in of itself. I have multiple instances of the same agent training all at once to maximize the training process. And the agent has synthetic vision. So it is able to see within a certain field of view, indicated by this series of white lines, but also with a line of sight. a certain amount of line of sight. So the distance of the white line dictates its line of sight. Now, if it can see the door, if it's able to see its goal, the white line turns to red here. And it has an eye on the top of its head and an eye at its base, so it can see whether the barriers are tall or short. That's its framework in order to learn its environment. So the sentient agent training can suggest a rhizomatic approach to perception, in reference to Deleuze, suggesting infinite vantage points and pathways, although not all of them will lead to somewhere. The rock garden suggesting letting go of all thoughts, distractions, and the ego. So these two ways of thinking and sentience in juxtaposition within the scene of the rock garden, playing itself out, utilizing a form of machine learning. Okay, so based upon that, I built more sophisticated agents. So here is Agent Key and Agent Alpha. They're both humanoid agents, and both, one of them, Agent Chi, represents Eastern thought. Chi corresponding to the concept of energy or life force. Chi pronounced in Chinese, Ki in Japanese pronunciation. Then we have Agent Alpha, which is the embodiment of Western thought. Now here I have Agent Chi training to get to the green cube. And at first its movements is quite sporadic, and after about 4 million steps, it is able to understand its environment and walk to that platform in order to get to the green box, but still it is unable to dependably grab the object. This is a work in progress. So based upon this framework, I've developed other scenarios for Chi to learn on. This one is a low gravity scenario where it is tasked with getting to a representation of infinity, a virtual representation of infinity. Now here, let me just pause the video briefly. This particular segment of the training session is in real time and is at step 110,000. And you can see its reward states kind of fluctuating on this portion of the footage. So this is training in real time. So here the reward state is at negative 79.707. But now I've, based upon the results of that training session, it's using a neural model now. It's in inference mode basically, and it's using the neural model to perform out its task. Okay, so here is footage within the headset, the VR headset. You are kind of in third person looking at this agent. And if you go through that particular door, you get to the next stage. You get to the stage where it involves Agent Alpha. Right, so footage from other training sessions, work in progresses. This is work in progress where Agent Chi is trying to get to the door by ascending a series of stairs. It's kind of fascinating to watch the training process unfold in front of my eyes in real time, even though it takes several hours to do this. So here, Agent Chi, I have multiple instances of Agent Chi based upon the results of that training session, getting to the door. And the surprising thing here is that it's learned to jump in order to get to the door more efficiently. So it's using jumping. It's found out that it's more efficient to jump. Now here's an example, a low gravity example, but still using the same neural model, a model that is trained on high gravity or regular gravity, quote unquote. So that's another kind of thing I'm kind of interested in trying, is seeing where the limits are in its behavior, even though I've changed its scenario, how well it can infer based upon changes to its environment. So many things to try in the coming months, and much more work to be done, exploratory work to be done in this direction. Okay, well, thank you for your time and attention, and hopefully I can field some questions either remotely or via email. Okay, thank you again. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's all of our presentation, and thank you very much for your time and attention, and we can take some questions if you have any.
I will start with one for Sue. What is the most challenging part of your practice?
I'm actually trying to work with invisible and non-representational data and like feelings in the area. So embodying the non-representational is hard because it's non-representational. So like making a representation of the non-representation is really hard. It's hard to articulate how I experience because it's just like right there and I'm just feel the moment. It's very effective. So I think the most challenging is actually making a visual or any kind of like a representation or like even including the language. So I think that's the most challenging part for me. So like so feeling the gap between the representation, what we are accustomed to, like as a human and a technology. So we're immersed by the representation, like languages and numbers, visuals and audios, but actually what we feel and like what happens between the bodies and what happens between the moments is it's hard to describe and hard to represent. So yeah, that's the most challenging part for me.
I can understand you. And how philosophy or epistemology can help you with this?
There's a lot of endeavor in scholarly work, like in philosophy. So try to challenge the dualism, like a mind and a body. So like affect theory really helps, and non-representation theory really helps because those kind of like a theory and a research try to articulate this area. So that really helps for me to get share the language and guide me to how I can actually really not just a representation, like how I can experience it, with some kind of like a method. So that kind of like provides me with some method or framework. So epistemology, that's a challenging part because I'm actually trying to go out of like a representation, but I'm relying on the representation, which is epistemology and a language and a text. So that helps me a lot, and it's ironic that I'm relying on that too. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Sanglim, I would be interested to know a little bit more about the processes of glitching that you're using. Are you simply using distortion within the framework of applications, or are you working more on the level of introducing errors into the data? And within that, what is the significance, if you will, of errors, whether they're from working with the software or from manipulating the data itself?
For me, I don't know, I should call it a glitch, but like, I don't know what you were talking about, but for my practices, it's more like I create the rule that can construct the digital forms. So it is more about, rather than like creating an error, but it is more like I have a authority to build this word, but at the end, I don't really, I kind of like realize I am not the creator of the work, because like lots of portion of my work is done by the calculation or like autonomous computational system. So my practices is more like figuring out how I position myself as an artist, like working with the technology. So it is not like intentionally like creating an error, but it is more like a journey for me as an artist working with the technology, like me, it's hard. More like I feel like I'm a creator, but at the end I just, notice that the whole process with the system. Does it make sense?
Well, I think so, but I suppose the thing is that at some point then you're saying you sacrifice your own autonomy so that the system generates the objects that you're working with. Whether it's an error or a glitch, or if it's something else, the giving up of autonomy or the realization that one is not autonomous also seems to belong to glitch aesthetics.
So it is more like invented, like I invent the formulas there that just deconstruct the forms. So it is, I just come up with like bunch of like physics there and then just let them simulate, and then I pick the results like a photographer. I just pick the aesthetics.
And right, artist E. Well, thank you for your great presentation. Well, I think there are a lot of parts that I could resonate with what you said. So in the beginning, you felt you are creating the rule of this 3D world, but at the end of the rendering the scene, you found like, actually, I don't have a full authority over the rule, right? But I feel like so far your focus is more on creating the generating the imageries, right? And also the playing with the material. And do you have you ever thought about telling a story, like carrying out the storytelling through that art form? Because personally, I feel that way you can have more authority, over that world and create another type of, the control over that world. And yeah, I just want to hear about like the possible, next steps with your activities.
My work seems like doesn't have a narrative like in a traditional sense, but I think there exists some sort of like non-linear narrative. So I'm working on it. I don't know, but like, yeah, hope it makes sense. Thank you. We also have Jason and Alex is connected, so.
We can, take their questions and all.
Thank you for the presentation. My question would go for the both of you, and it's about the. Oh, sorry. So it's about the actual presentation of representation itself, on the one hand, and on the other hand, the such words that that are already created. So. What medium could be appropriate to share these kind of experiments?
So what media can like contribute to the this experience of like experiencing the non-representations and affect and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. So like in what way can this experiment be shared with others?
With others means technology and media and yeah. So trying to clarify the question. Sorry.
With others means a possible audience, not in a conference setting.
Sure. Oh,
but,
I see. Yeah.
I mean, in any other visual art setting.
Sure,
like
sure, yeah.
museum and so on.
I think that's another part that is challenging for me to share. So making a representation is like to present it to someone, and so I can share what I'm actually like experiencing. So that's another challenging part. Is I'm trying to, so how to share it. So I guess like for my a recent work, the synthetic Cognisphere, I tried to share a space and use the sound and the visuals and use the shared fabric. So try to make a space that is where the cognizers of like non-human cognizers and the human cognizer data is intermingled and like intertwined together. So it's more like try to use evoke the experience, like the feeling or the non-linguistic experience in it. So I think it's how I'm actually sharing this experience with the audience is actually try to use have them engage it through the interactive work and have invite them to the spaces that I created virtually. So bringing them to the space that I experienced. So I don't know if this makes sense, but yeah, that's how it's hard. I'm so that's another challenging part for me. So how do I share? I know I have the very strong feeling that which is very hard to describe, like a non-representational and effective, but how do I create this to present and share with the someone? So it's hard, but I'm trying to use evoke a sense of experience being there. Yeah.
Are there more questions? Okay. Thank you. May I have a question for Jason? Is he online?
Jason?
Yeah. Have him. I think the Wi-Fi work is so interesting, and I think it seems like it very depends on the context and environment when people get in touch with it. So I'm trying to ask how many participants have you reached for, and in which scenario that you show this work to them? I'm very curious about how well they reacted, because when people connect to this free Wi-Fi in museum will be totally different when people try to connect it on the street. So I'm wondering how can you give some examples about how people reacted to it? Thank you.
Yeah. So Jason, how many participants have been you tested with, how they reacted, and I guess the context, like it's finding that on the street. You actually mentioned in your presentation you're gonna install that in a different like around in different institutions. So I guess like the context, like how you can like, if you can just elaborate on the context of the work. So Jason responded, this is still in a work in progress and it hasn't been implemented yet. So a lot of my work is predicated on the surprise. So I think being surprised allow us to think about the things in new ways. And just like knowing Jason, he works a lot with the surprise. So if you check out his website, he actually used this surprise in a surprising encounter a lot. So, and yeah, that's all. Like a surprise, I think like finding it, the Wi-Fi, and like a surprised audience a little bit is kind of like the point of the work. And yeah, so I tested his work as actually just luckily, and I knew, I knew it's not gonna be the normal Wi-Fi. So it was a little different, like a surprise was a little less, but it was actually bringing me to the kind of like layers of the questions. So it was a really interesting experience. So I think like I was confused in the beginning, like the definition of the free, like free is like free for you, or like, so like it becomes a little more complex, and was confusing at the first, like in the beginning, and then like it bring me to like questioning myself, like should I follow? And like I doubted a little bit because the Wi-Fi says there's a security like issue as well. So like, should I just like go further or not? So I think like it's kind of like a layers of questions. So you experience in his work, yeah.
Any other question? Oh, sorry.
I think all these projects are interesting to help us visualize possible futures. And I have a question for Alex Lee, just because I feel like the metaphor feels clear for me looking at what he's doing, where he's literally trying to teach this digital being how to walk. And so in some ways, I think we're so early on in this virtual space that it's kind of hard to understand like where it's going to go, sometimes even the purpose, or like how is it going to be experienced. But I get the sense that a string that I'm finding in all of them is that we are personifying this virtual space, and we're even putting representations of the physical world into the virtual world. So I guess any of you can answer, but I wonder what Alex Lee's perspective is on the future of what this space will be.
So your future, like of the where this like your work is going. So is it, did I get a break after? Yeah. So you're kind of like where you're going with this work. Yeah. So he's thinking because it's a big question. So he has 3 episodes in his mind, and he's working on the episode 2. The example in the presentations are at the halfway point, so I guess like if you can talk a little bit more conceptually, that'd be great, I guess.
You could also answer it too. I'd be curious because you're recreating the virtual world to kind of have elements of the literal physical world that you're seeing with your own eyes, and so I'm curious, where do you see
just virtual in general?
Yeah, like yeah. What do you see this space being in 20 years?
I guess like so. So my interest is actually cognition. So I'm interested in the virtual. So when I start to talk like have a discussion with these panels on the virtual. We actually have all different perspectives on the virtual. So I guess like the virtual is, I'm actually bringing the idea, like a philosophical idea of the virtual, like from Deleuze. So like it's actually something before something is actualized. So I thought like it's interesting that like shared the language. The virtual is like everything that we actually, everything that is actually here with me. It's like the virtual world is another thing. Like so the digital world is one virtual that we are actually accustomed to at this moment. But I think like a virtual is everything that is not actualized. So like it's like here, and the cognition is another thing. So my interest is actually how I can, the technology and a human can share beyond the data, like, so we're communicating with the computer, like the virtual world is all about data, which is representational data, and effect is one thing that like, that I'm sharing with the Sanglim and other people in here in the experience. There's so many things happening in a non-linguistic way, but actually there's with the technology, I think a lot of things are very linguistic and representational. So I'm wondering if the virtual world can I have a relationship with the virtual in the future, in a very effective way, so I can actually develop my relationship with technology like I developed the relationship with a human, and like other things like, or animals or plants. So I think it's not physical, but still I feel like there's a space for this non-representation and effective area. So that's, I don't know if it's going there, but it's for sure, like for me, where the interest, like where my interest is currently in, yeah. So I guess, yeah, so thank you very much for your great questions. So they really inspired us a lot. So, and I really appreciate your time, and I think that's all for our presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you.